Welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast, brought to you by TournamentPokerEdge.com, the only podcast dedicated exclusively to poker tournament strategy. Now here's your host, Clayton Fletcher.
Hello once again, everybody, and welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast. My name is Clayton Fletcher, and I am in peaceful, safe, serene New York City, happy to be bringing you yet another edition of the world's longest running poker strategy podcast. Last week's episode, I had a blockbuster episode featuring two of my favorite all-time guests, actually two of my favorite all-time guys, Joseph Stapleton, a.k.a. Stapes, a.k.a. Uncle Daddy, and of course, my friend Alex, the Assassinato Fitzgerald. It was a lot of fun. We were together, the three of us, in a hotel room in Denver, Colorado. We had played in a meetup game. If you haven't yet listened to that episode, I highly recommend it. I think it's very entertaining and some pretty darn good poker content in it as well. Another thing that's been going on is I've been doing more live streaming as promised in our goal-setting episode for 2025. I've already been much more active on Twitch this month than I was last month, and I plan to keep that going all year long. I actually hosted the Tournament Poker Edge free roll on ACR Poker, and that was last Sunday. Every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, we give away $1,000 absolutely free. And I'll be honest, guys, I'm still figuring out Twitch and streaming and what the right vibe is. I know everybody gets on there, they just want me to give them the password so that they can play the free roll. I kind of like to make it more fun and let people guess the password and drop a few hints. I like to make sure that as many of our actual Tournament Poker Edge members and podcast listeners as possible can get into the free roll, which I'll admit does cause a certain amount of discontentment among some of the Twitch players, if you will. It's actually amazing to me, guys. Sometimes when someone is getting something for nothing, it's amazing how entitled that person can be, despite the fact that you're literally getting something for free. Anyway, I had a lot of fun, and our friend Stewie, who is a regular podcast listener and longtime friend of TPE, proud member of TPE Nation, actually final tabled that free roll. 400 players. I believe Stewie took 7th, I want to say. And so shout out to Stewie and to everyone else who joined me on twitch.tv/ClaytonComic, where I promise I will be streaming a lot more in the weeks to come. All right, I want to get into a hand that the Assassinato himself brought onto the podcast last week. We had a lot of fun discussing this hand, and I thought it was a very lively discussion, one where we didn't always agree on what the best play was. And as usual, I'm going to use GTO Wizard to go through that very same hand once more. And this time we're going to use my favorite poker tool, GTO Wizard. You can plug in any spot. You can describe what type of tournament you're in, whether it's an MTT or a PKO or a mystery bounty or just a regular old tournament. And once you plug in those variables, the wizard spits out the perfect, unexploitable, game theory optimized solution for you. It's a lot of fun to use. I've gotten much better at poker just by using this tool and then figuring out when to try to approximate GTO and when to try to exploit my more exploitable opponents, i.e. those who have obvious leaks in their games, by deviating from the GTO solutions. But the first step is learning those solutions and figuring out how you would play versus an opponent who literally never makes a mistake. So let's go back and talk about the hand that Alex brought up. And Joseph Stapleton and I were trying to figure out what the best way to play this hand was. The action starts with a raise on the button at about 60 big blinds effective, kind of early in a $44 online tournament. We are in the big blind, hero with the 9 of diamonds, 8 of hearts, and we opted to call. I think all three of us guys agreed that calling is the play here. But the wizard, I want to tell you guys, the wizard actually does a 3-bet with this hand around 3% of the time, which I found odd. We don't block any big hands like aces or kings or ace-king, and we're not even suited. But yeah, maybe like one time out of 30, you are actually supposed to 3-bet with your 9-8 offsuit. Now look, in practice, if you never do that, are you really giving up much EV? Are you actually going to be that exploitable? No, but if you don't 3-bet with this hand ever, and the flop comes 7-6-5, your savvy opponents will know that you do not have the nuts, and they can play very aggressively against your decidedly non-nutted hand. No nut November, I guess. Anyway, so that's the only disadvantage to absolutely never 3-betting with a hand like this. But in practice, I really don't think it's necessary for us to work in these little 2%, 3% plays very much, because at the end of the day, most of our opponents aren't actually paying that much attention to begin with. Anyway, we did just call, and now with 5.1 big blinds in the middle, the flop comes 6 of diamonds, 5 of clubs, Trey of hearts. So 6-5 Trey, rainbow, hero with the 9 of diamonds, 8 of hearts, 2 overcards, and a gut shot to the nuts. We check from the big blind, and the button puts in 3.8 big blinds into the 5.1 big blind pot, about 75%. Alex says that when opponent bets this sizing, he shouldn't have a set very often. And I agree with that. I think that mostly when players have very big hands on low card flops, they don't overbet or bet this chunky. So it feels like it could be a hand like pocket jacks, maybe pocket queens, just not really wanting any more scare cards to come or for the board to straighten out even more than it already is. And the consensus among the three of us was that the 6-high flop is just much better for our overall range than for the in-position raiser who opened from the button. Alex decided to check raise to 10.65 big blinds, and the button made the call. So let's look at this hand from the perspective of GTO Wizard. This flop action of check raising with the gut shot, the wizard actually calls this bet 86% of the time. We do see a higher frequency of check raising versus a smaller sizing, but when your opponent sizes up this much, we actually want to check raise less often. And sizing wise, the wizard doesn't approve of this 3x the bet thing that Alex does here. Rather than that, 13% of the time, GTO Wizard wants to just basically click it back and take it from 10.65 up to 22 big blinds. And only 1% of the time are we doing the 3x thing here. So not really solver approved, although once in a blue moon, the solver will do the 3x check raise in this situation. Mostly 86% of the time, it's a call. So now, with the pot at 26.5 big blinds, and we have 49 big blinds in our effective stack, the turn comes the king of diamonds, which puts 2 diamonds on the board, and Alex decided to bet 11 big blinds into the 26.5 big blind pot. And you guys may recall in last week's episode, I didn't want to bet the king of diamonds. I feel like it's a card that hits our opponent's range way more than it hits ours. And once our check raise got called on the flop, I really didn't like seeing that king of diamonds peel off. And so I wanted to check. Interesting, because GTO Wizard wants to check 89% of the time. But I will say, of the 11% of the time that we are supposed to bet, this is the sizing that the wizard likes. Right around 40% of the pot is solver approved. So heading to the river, the pot is 49 big blinds, and we have 38 big blinds in the stack. And that river is the deuce of diamonds, which you may recall completes everything, the flush and the straight. For that reason, I didn't want to shove. Stapes said that he's never seen a better shove. And Alex says, although we don't have a lot of fours, he still wants to shove, simply because Alex is a very exploitative player. And against the field in these $40 online tournaments, a lot of guys are able to call on the turn, but then once the big money goes in on the river, they fold. So it just felt like a triple barrel spot for him. So we had 2 votes for shove and 1 vote, mine, for check. And the funny part is GTO Wizard never shoves, but it also never checks. The solver actually likes something in between, either betting 5.5 big blinds into the 49 big blind pot, also called a post oak bluff. The solver does that play 78% of the time, which I just found shocking. Like, that is a tiny bet that's almost never going to get through, but that's what we're supposed to do once we have played this hand in such a way as to get to this point in the first place. The rest of the time, 22% of the time, we're supposed to bet 19.5 into 49 big blinds, 22% of the time. So the solver doesn't like Alex's play, and it also doesn't like what I want to do, preferring to bet some amount all the time, but not ever shoving. So the shove did get through, so we don't know what the opponent had. But isn't it interesting to go through a hand that we talked about at length last week and see what a supercomputer would do in Hero's shoes, and just see how different the robots want to play and want to teach us all how to play in order to be unexploitable. And if you are interested in learning more about GTO Wizard, I've got a great deal for you. We have an affiliate link in the description of this podcast. You click that link, and then you get 24 hours access to all of GTO Wizard's features. And once you're ready to purchase, because you click that link in order to sign up, you will save 10% off of your first online transaction at gtowizard.com/p/TPE. All right, I want to use the wizard again, and this time on a hand from 2 weeks ago. This was a hand that was played on day 1D of the World Series of Poker main event back in 2024, aka last year. The blinds were 200 and 400 with a 400 big blind ante, and the players in this hand all have stacks above 100 big blinds. Eric Roberts, a player in second position, opens to 800 with the ace of clubs, 9 of clubs, and the action folds all the way around to the big blind Levi Klump, who called. So the wizard loves the open, and no problem with the sizing here with the ace 9 of clubs. The flop comes king of spades, 6 of clubs, and deuce of spades. So king 6 deuce. Hero with the ace 9 of clubs, so we've got an overcard and backdoor flush possibilities. Big blind checks, and now Hero bets 1,100 into 2,200, and I remember saying last time, or when we went over this hand 2 weeks ago, I remember saying I felt like this flop sizing was a little too big. I think when we have a king, we just want to bet small and try to get some value for our hand, and that's really what you're representing when you bet this flop, maybe pocket aces or ace king, hands in that category, having raised from second position, and now the flop comes king high. I think 700 or 800 would get it done. Roberts fires 1,100, but let's see what the solver has to say. And GTO Wizard is with me. When we have the ace 9 of clubs, we're supposed to bet 2 into 6. That's 2 big blinds into the 6 big blind pot, 82.4% of the time. We're never betting half the pot. We're betting 2/3 of the pot about 8% of the time. And the rest, we're basically checking and taking that free card. So for me, I'm going to give myself credit for making the right decision and wanting to bet small. So at that point, the turn comes the 5 of clubs, and now with 4,400 in the middle, the big blind checks again, and Eric Roberts, having picked up the flush draw on the turn, I remember I was quite adamant that he should bet this turn card, and that I actually wanted to bet about 150% of the pot, maybe 65 into 44, but instead Roberts checked it back. So let's see what the wizard has to say about this decision on the turn. So the GTO solution on the turn with ace of clubs, 9 of clubs, having picked up the nut flush draw, is actually polarized between betting 150% of the pot and checking. So we basically overbet 40.6% of the time and check behind the rest. So as it turns out, although I was adamant and I felt that Roberts absolutely needs to bet this card, the solver mostly does check behind. But it's pretty revealing that when we do bet, we want to bet a very large overbet sizing. So that was pretty interesting to me. And then with no action on the turn, the river comes the 5 of spades. And so with 4,400 in the middle, the front door flush comes in, pairing the board with the 5 of spades, and Klump checks one more time, and it's up to Eric Roberts with just ace high on the river, and he decides to check behind. So let's look and see what the ace-9 of clubs is supposed to do on the river, and it is actually a pure 100% of the time check, just as Roberts played it. Look, if we don't bet the turn, if we don't try to take control of the pot on the turn, and then everything gets there on the river, and we don't block that flush, and we got called on the flop, and it's not a great card for us to bluff on the river, I think I like this. It makes perfect sense to me. And I remember saying last time when we discussed this hand originally that if we check the turn, I think we have to check the river. And I think at this point you guys can see the value of using a solver to kind of check lines and maybe figure out what someone who knows everything there is to know about poker would do in any given situation. All right, let's move on. I want to do some new hands. I was streaming the other day on twitch.tv/Clayton Comics, so I want to talk about a hand that I played in a $33 PKO, Progressive Knockout Bounty event with a $15,000 guarantee. The blinds were 1,600 and 3,200 with a 400 ante per player. It's 8-handed, so there's 8,000 in the middle already. Hero starts on the button with 57,000, so about 17 big blinds. Still about an hour left in late registration, and I opened from the button to 2 big blinds of my 17, and I've got the King of Hearts, 10 of Spades. Now, the small blind was a tight player, and the big blind was a very, very, very loose, aggressive player. He is running 38-31 with 18% 3-bet over 150 plus hands recorded. So he's a Russian guy. He's the chip leader in the tournament with over 100 big blinds, and his numbers are wild and aggressive. So I open with King 10 offsuit, small blind folds, and then this known Russian loose aggressive opponent shoves. Can we call with the King 10 offsuit given this opponent's profile? Well, the first question is, what's the GTO solution? And I think that it's pretty close. Maybe like Ace-9 is a call, and King-Queen is probably a call, but in all likelihood, King-Jack is a mix, and King-10 is a fold. So is it good enough to call knowing that our opponent is so wild and so aggressive? Also, he may be trying to collect our bounty, which is a minimum bounty at this point, $15. So we've got that to think about as well. I decided to make the call, and the reason why is because I think you can't really be putting in 2 of your 17 big blinds and then folding too much to players who 3-bet shove too much. Next week, we'll take a look at the GTO solution and see whether King 10 is a pure call or not. I suspect that it's not, but I don't think it's that far off. I'm pretty sure that Ace-Jack or Ace-10 in my shoes is a pure call, but we'll find out next week. We'll take a look at that. I have been studying these spots, but it's different when you have 17 big blinds versus 25 big blinds versus 10 big blinds, so I may be a little bit off in my ranges. But just the fact that this guy is so loose and so aggressive and always trying to take every pot away made me want to call with King 10. As it turned out, he had Ace-Jack, so we were actually in perfectly fine shape to take a coin flip. I mean, it's not really a coin flip. I think opponent is about 57, 58%. As the cards happen to lie, but I still stand by my decision to widen my calling range because when I opened this hand, I knew there was a great chance this guy would shove with a very wide range. I think Ace-Jack is actually pretty close to the top of his range for shoving on me here, as I think he would slow play a lot of his monsters. So anyway, I'm still, 42, 43% versus the exact hand I was up against, but I couldn't get lucky and had to re-enter the tournament. So let me know what you guys think about this hand, and soon enough, we will be talking about the GTO solution and why I may or may not have deviated away from that in a future episode. I will say that the chat, as I was live streaming, were almost 100% to a man opposed to this call, and that they would rather raise fold with this hand than raise call it off for 17 big blinds in this spot. Let me know what you guys think. You can find me on the TPE Discord. There's a link. You can join that for free and chime in and join the discussion about this and all the other hands that we discuss here on the TPE podcast. You can also find me on Twitter at Clayton Comic. I'm actually Clayton Comic on all social media platforms, including the aforementioned twitch.tv/Clayton Comic. All right, one more hand for today, and then we're going to wrap this episode up from the same exact tournament, a $33 PKO. Obviously, I re-entered. Registration was still open at this point, and we were doing great. The blinds were 2,500 and 5K with a 600 ante, and we had 282,000, which was about 25% above an average stack, about 60-ish big blinds. And I was in second position with the ace of hearts, deuce of hearts, or as you may call it, under the gun +1. And I decided to open with my suited wheel ace deuce suited. I made it 10K, just 2 big blinds. And then the action folded to the player in fourth position, who 3-bet to 31,000 and had me covered, but only barely. The action folded all the way back to me. And what am I supposed to do with the ace of hearts, deuce of hearts? Well, first off, I'd like to share some HUD stats from this opponent. He was a very tight player, running 15-11 with 5% 3-bet over 110 hands, which isn't a huge sample, but it's enough to kind of start to glean a picture of someone's general playing style. I suspect that the solver would have me call and see a flop, maybe even put in the occasional 4-bet with my suited ace, but I decided to fold against such a tight opponent who hardly ever 3-bets, only 5% 3-bet, and not really wanting to play and see a flop from out of position where I might have some really dicey situations, especially those times when I flop an ace, and then check to him and he bets big. What am I supposed to do? I have no kicker. That's what I'm most concerned about, but also just kind of getting outplayed by a tight, aggressive player who has position on me. I decided to make an exploitative fold. Now, if I'm going to fold when I get 3-bet, maybe I shouldn't be opening this hand in the first place, but I don't always fold to a 3-bet with the ace-deuce suited. It was really because this particular opponent from relatively early position, remember he's only in fourth position himself, and with his very tight and very selective HUD statistics, I decided just to get out of dodge while the getting was good. So let me know what you guys think about this one. These are 2 hands today where I think I deviated from the GTO solution. I've been studying these solutions so hard, and then I still want to try to exploit my opponent's tendencies in real life, which is generally what I think we should all be doing. And that'll do it for this episode. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please give us a good review, a good rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It really does help us increase our visibility on various platforms, so it would mean a lot to me if you guys could do that. And for everyone here at Tournament Poker Edge, I'm Clayton Fletcher. Thank you so much for listening.
I wanna hold them like they do in Texas, please. Fold them, let them hit me, raise it, baby, stay with me. Luck and intuition, play the cards with babes to start. And after she's been hooked, I'll play the one that's on her heart. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I'll get her heart, show her what I got. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I'll get her heart, show her what I got. Can't read mine, no she can't read a mile. Poker face, she's got to love nobody. Can't read mine, no she can't read a mile. Poker face, with her, a hard pair we will be. While little gambling is fun when you're with me. I love it. Russian roulette is not the same without a gun. And baby, when it's love, if it's not rough, it isn't fun. Oh, whoa, whoa, oh, whoa.